So in this video, we're going to talk about a couple of Supreme Court cases that you need to know for the AP exam that deal with redistricting. So until the 1960s, the drawing of the district boundaries had been left up to the states. Political parties used the opportunity to give their party the highest possible number of representatives. So in the last lesson, we talked about gerrymandering, and how that was used. So again, there is a link here if you want to watch another video that talks a little bit more about this case. I'm just going to briefly run through the details. So the background: Charles Baker, who is a resident of Memphis, Tennessee, is going to challenge Tennessee's district boundaries. He is going to argue that he and others in his district were being denied equal protection provided by the 14th Amendment. In this case, rural areas are going to end up having more representation, than urban areas. And that's because Tennessee had not redrawn their districts every 10 years like you're supposed to. So we talked about redistricting and how after every census, you're supposed to redraw those district boundaries. So because of that, some districts are going to have 10 times the population of other districts because they're based on outdated census data. And this is going to result in malapportionment, or voting districts with unequal populations. So what Baker is going to argue is that the votes of residents of different districts are unequal in weight in selecting political representation because some districts are so much larger than other districts. Tennessee, however, is going to argue that drawing congressional boundaries should be left up to the states and that the Supreme Court should not have any kind of say in this matter. So the question here is, does the Supreme Court have jurisdiction over questions of legislative malapportionment or apportionment, or is this a political question? The court is going to rule that legislative apportionment is a judiciable issue in this case. It's also going to conclude that the 14th Amendment issues, which Baker and the others had raised in this case, merited judicial evaluation. So again, that idea that their vote is not counting because the districts are so uneven, So this is going to lead to the idea of one person, one vote, which states that districts in state legislatures must be equal in population. So you can't have those districts that are 10 times the size of another district. So district lines must be drawn in a way where everyone is getting the same weighted vote. So members of Congress are going to represent roughly the same amount of people. So again, think to the idea of Kentucky, how Louisville is essentially its own district compared to Eastern Kentucky, which is essentially its own district. So the Eastern Kentucky district is much larger in size than the Louisville district, but they are roughly equal in population. So that's where this comes from, this one person, one vote principle. The districts and state legislatures have to be equal in population. All right, the next case that we're going to talk about is Shaw v. Reno. Again, another link here if you would like to click on that and learn a little bit more information. So following the 1990 census, North Carolina is going to gain a seat in the House of Representatives. So every 10 years, they do that redistricting, reapportionment. So they had to draw this new congressional district map. And North Carolina is going to attempt to create two majority-minority districts. And this is where racial minority is the majority. So that's what those are again. And this is going to result in one really bizarrely shaped district. This district is going to be 160 miles long and no wider than the interstate along which it's stretched. So this is the district here, So you can see how crazy this district looks, all right, the way that it is broken down. So 5 North Carolina residents are going to sue, and they're going to claim that the district was drawn based on racial motivation, So we're going back. They're wanting to create those majority-minority districts. You're going to get this crazy-looking district that's no wider than the interstate along which it's stretched. So the court is going to rule that congressional districts that are drawn solely on the basis of race violate the 14th Amendment. And they're going to rule that in this case, race was used to such a degree in drawing the boundaries that it could only be understood to segregate votes into separate districts, So trying to create that district so that a person of a racial minority would become a representative for that state. So although racial considerations may be a legitimate concern in many state-level decisions, efforts to segregate the voting public based on race alone could have unintended negative consequences. So you can consider race when redistricting, but you cannot try to segregate the voting public based on race alone when you are redistricting or when these state legislatures are redistricting. So this is not allowed. All right, and that's where we're going to stop with this lesson.